How are you?
I'm very good. How are you doing? You've been working hard.
Yes, it's crunch time. I have actually even the session here open. You can see it in all its glory. It looks like
Beautiful.
a nice little rainbow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
Yes,
I saw the cup of coffee next to you. That's
yes,
more
yes.
important.
Yeah, it's a very permanent installation, if you will. In its
Very
own
good.
ways, it's in more than one ways. I feel like it's a work of art. Um,
Yeah.
whoever discovered coffee, I appreciate it. I just wanted to ask you. I sent you yesterday, basically after your comments
Hmm.
had. I just wanted to send you something where we can really focus on nothing else but just the orchestra.
Hmm.
For you, that's why I did not include any other detail like the narration. I
Great.
just wanted to ask you if you had any comments about anything else you want to adjust, so that basically we can then add back everything else.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, you're right. The very beginning and the ending, if you can fix a little bit the pitch there,
Yeah.
just the very beginning. The ending doesn't bother me quite as much, but the very beginning is just a little. And then at I think it's at 150, 145 or so, if you listen, when the clarinet solo begins,
Yeah.
because it's this D major chord, and then the clarinet starts, I think, on an F sharp, and it's a little bit sharper than where the strings are holding this pedal. I
Yes.
don't know if there's anything you can do about that. I don't want it to
Yes.
sound unnatural. Sorry.
No, no, of course, yes. I'll try to bring these places as much as I can. Generally speaking, the challenge with pitch correction is that it alters the timbre of the instrument,
Hmm.
which is why I was, saying I would love to do a little bit of gentle pitch correction if I could. Like if we're
Very
changing
good.
something a cent or so, maybe it will work. But what you would lose actually generally is you lose resonance.
Okay, so then it's
Very
not worth it. It's not worth it
right.
in the clarinet solo. But at the very beginning, I think it's worth exploring. You know.
Yes, yes. I'm already doing some, and I know it's especially in I think it's basically flutes and clarinet and how they interplay with the violins.
Mm-mm.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. I'll work on that. You
the
got it.
high harmonics of the violins, yeah, sound a little strange. How do the videos look?
So the videos, and actually, I wanted to ask your thought on this. So the video, I'm about maybe 6 minutes and a half into the video. It's a the original plan was it would have all the videos collected by I think the 1st of July, but the challenge was that because of the changes that we ended up going through, we needed to wait a little bit before the
Hmm.
videos can be completed, like narration. And before you can have a video, you needed to have the narration be done so you can hear that, so you can make your own video having that detail into the mix, if
Hmm.
you will. So I'm gonna try to. I am staying, for a while and doing some long hours, so I can get basically as much as I can done today. And tonight I'm gonna send the team sort of the first maybe half of the video as a sample. If you want, I'm happy to include you in like a private link
Can you
to.
please? Yeah, I'm
Of
curious to
course.
see it.
Yeah. And just to ask you, actually, I had a question for you. I feel like it's an interesting. I wanted to take your perspective on this. So anytime we see videos so far, what
Hmm.
happens is we see all these little blocks of where people are playing. There's too many of them. It becomes almost overwhelming to the observer. They become an observer, really. It's hard to listen. So I've taken a different approach. Generally the orchestral video, first of all, is in black and white, at
Mm.
least for the moment. Because I thought that you can really see a lot more of the detail of every one person. And I'm trying to avoid putting too many people on the screen at the same time, because if we do, you never see anyone. It's much more about maybe someone discovering themselves than the actual, listener being able to both hear and see enough that they can process at the same time. And one question I have for you is, when it comes to conductors on the screens, I've looked at a few videos because I wanted to just learn from what has been done so far. One of the things that I was curious about is, I try to bring you in places where I feel like it's not about how often, but how impactful is it to see someone. And I
Hmm.
just wanted to ask you, what's your thought on this? Like, do you have any particular sort of thoughts yourself of what would you like if it was up to you? Because honestly, I'm really open to any ideas. I just want to know what how you feel about it.
I think you have to imagine sort of being like a like if you wore a drone, if you had a drone during a concert,
Mhm.
and you could watch, on the drone, on a, this is how I imagine the camera work, So I don't. It's not. I think a couple of times, maybe at the very beginning or at the end, or when things grow with the music, we can have all the musicians on screen. But I think in general, if you are guided by whatever instrument is playing to sort of have them come. Obviously, at the very beginning, it actually doesn't make sense to have the entire orchestra on the string because most people are just sitting there counting rests.
Right.
So I think when we have a full tutti section, then we can definitely have the orchestra so that it has that impact. As far as the conductor's role, I think if you find moments, I definitely don't feel like it needs to be. Um, did you see that video that Philly Orchestra did with Yannick? That basically they took the like a um, electronic scene of the skyline of Philadelphia, and then instead of buildings, it was just videos of
Mhm.
the musicians, and you could
Yeah, yeah,
still see sort of the buildings, but it was actually live. Like the buildings were live, like you could see everything. And then there was always a little building somewhere where Yannick would appear conducting
yeah,
at all
yeah, yeah,
times.
yeah,
Now,
yeah.
I don't know if this would actually be interesting, where I'm never really, I mean, like at the very beginning, I can start the piece in the
Mhm.
center focus, but I don't know
Right.
if it'll be interesting to always sort of keep me in a tiny little spot,
Mhm,
you
mhm.
know, just so that even if it's just small, like not something that it's very important to see, but
Mhm.
just so that it feels like there's some continuity with
Yes.
this. And then I don't know, I mean, it's just a thought. I really don't care to be on the screen, it doesn't matter to me at all, but I'm just thinking of, if you were sitting in the audience, you can't escape seeing the conductor, right? and
Right.
th- and then you see the conductor all the time, which it impacts a little bit of how you listen to the music as well,
Mhm.
perhaps. And then you're looking at different musicians, but because the conductor is the only one standing in front of the orchestra, you see them inevitably.
Yeah, it's a part
Uh,
of the experience to always have them there. Sure.
exactly. So that's why, I mean, it's not an for me, it's not an ego thing. I really don't care if I'm on the screen or not. I feel like it's not really impactful in terms of the performance. But for
Mhm.
those watching, it might be interesting to always see me somewhere on the screen. You know,
Okay. Okay.
what do you think about that?
Well, no, I completely understand. So what I was trying to do, it's interesting because once I put the narration in, I feel like the whole piece changed. Because what
Hmm.
happened is, and this is where it became really interesting. I completely changed the way I thought I would approach the final balancing of everything. So you will watch this and you realize how interesting it is. So sometime when I was leveling how loud the narrator should be once added her to the mix,
Hmm.
without watching the video, I thought that certain volume of hers basically was reasonable and it was making sense. But then when I actually started editing and I would watch the video and hear her speak, I realized that psychologically there is no way to really call what her levels should be unless I'm doing it at the same time and seeing her.
Hmm.
It was a very strange experience. And so what I realized is that the final way to mix, for example, some of this would be to make sure that uh, you know I really think of the complete picture way ahead of time, meaning her as well as the conductor, as well as the development of the piece, and then figure out where to place all these different pieces. Why do I say this? Is because what I realized is that the first half of the piece, she is very densely present, right?
Hmm.
In fact, that's literally where a lot of the times, just when I was hearing a lot of the music and I've been used to hearing the music, and all of a sudden I realized she's actually speaking over it,
Hmm.
especially because when the text changed, I thought that there was a lot more added, which of course
Hmm.
I understand. So what I'm trying to do is, a lot of the times during this first half of the piece, which is what I'm been editing right now, is not to bring more than 5 or 6, maybe 7 people on the screen at the same time, and keep
Hmm.
changing who those people are within the shots, and then interchange those with her. And my hope is that basically when the second half of the piece begins and she's actually not present so much, that's when I would hope to open the orchestra up and basically make it really about how to show as many people as possible, have our interaction with you much more
Absolutely.
apparent. Just because the narration seems to take a lot of space, not only visually, but also, I mean, she's speaking literally while we're playing, saying really important things. So I'm being very, conscientious of how much can I show while she's speaking, because otherwise I'm noticing even myself not being able to hear what she's saying if I'm watching too much.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is just I'm gonna try to balance to where, especially in the second half of the piece, I'm really hoping to blossom the visual orchestral part of this, where the conductor musician's relationship is all that this is about.
Yeah, I agree. I think we can save, and it doesn't. I agree with you. I think when we have the big tutti climaxes, then we can use that as the visual cue as well to show like the grandeur or the magnitude of the entire orchestra. But the rest of the time, even if the entire orchestra is playing, we can still play around with who is on the screen and never have too many people that you don't see anyone, you know.
Right.
Um,
Exactly. And just to go after what you're saying, that's exactly what I was hoping for. Is that the only time I really show the full orchestra is in that climax where the tutti are performing, because at that point, what I'm trying to do is, at that point, we would have introduced every single person, and now you get to see them all at the same time.
mhm,
The concept that I had is because obviously the piece has to do with the females. In the first about, I think, first minute of the piece, the only people who you see playing, even though you hear a lot of people, are only the females of who's playing.
mm,
So there's not a single male you see until basically Barat's first solo, at which point he just takes over the screen.
mm, mm,
And I'm trying to sort of really respect that whole programmatic aspect of this, where you know it's also really powerful to watch. Stacy had asked me to put very particular images from the suffragettes in particular places in the piece.
mhm,
And so, for example, the first one is when they're protesting outside the White House, and they're asking, on the flags, there's these banners that says, Mr. President, how much longer will this continue on? And so what you have during this time is you see this picture and you see all these women playing to it.
beautiful.
It's really, really powerful. So, but I just wanted to check with you on this, because I felt like there's places where I would bring you in and I tried to see this, and it will be places where basically you're beating time, and I'm thinking to try to do it to where we kind of shadow you there, make sure that basically you're present, but at the same time we really leave the space for us
Absolutely.
all. Okay.
No, I really don't want to be a focus. I mean, this is not, I think just as you would have in a concert experience, I mean, you see the conductor sort of peripherally because they are standing in front of or in the middle of the entire experience, right? But it's not necessarily, at least when I go to the concerts, I don't necessarily look at the conductor, I look at the musicians, and then the conductor is always there, so I really don't mind, like, don't, you never have to make me a focus, I think it's totally fine if the focus is on those aspects and the narration and the pictures and the musicians so that we can see them, if it's possible for the musicians to be in the forefront, like throughout the piece, each one of the musicians, at some point to have the biggest shot on the screen so that people really see them,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
and then
Absolutely, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. And so I'm in the place of the piece where, at first, just to tell you of the concept, at first, basically, I'm introducing more of individualistic
mhm,
image of people. Eventually, what I start doing is start to bringing people in sections. But instead of, for example, bringing a section where, say, if you have 7 or 8 or 9 people, instead of bringing them all at the same time and making it look all really symmetrical, it is slightly asymmetrical. But in these particular, placeholders, I would just change who is there,
mhm,
so that you basically keep seeing the whole section. You always see where the concert masters are, and it's really clear because their images are put in such a way that they're three-dimensionally placed to look a little bit more in the forefront, without really being much larger. But you can tell that they're the concert masters. So I'll send you something tomorrow to see. And
okay.
it's funny because I was thinking to myself, how do I ask Cristi about something that I know he's going to be really humble about, but at the same time, it was just a question of making sure that where I'm going to go with this. Because right now, where I'm still in this place where narration happens so often, that honestly the hardest part for me is not to keep, shifting pictures so much. In fact, sometimes when she narrates, I'm not showing her on the screen at all.
Hmm.
Because
Interesting.
once we know that the narrator is that figure, that character, we don't need to see it every time in order to know who is it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll send you something. I just wanted to check in and make sure that you also don't have any other notes. I will definitely try to address the clarinet solo tuning, and also
If
especially
it
the
but if it doesn't change the timbre, I really don't want Barat to feel like this is not his sound. I think the quality of his sound is much more important than the slight discrepancy, which is I mean, it's unfortunately, but also I think it's inevitable based on just the reality of how we recorded this.
Yeah, I totally
um,
agree. I totally agree. And I also will tell you, he went through lengths, to make sure that he got, the sound that he wanted. It was very, he is a novice audio geek. So he called me up with some great questions. He had some interesting mics to work with. So he really
nice.
worked on it. But I work on this. Do you have anything else that you heard that you want, anything like balance or anything else that you want to try to change?
For me, I still feel like I know that Stacy is so careful in trying to keep this sort of very easy sort of packet sound, but in reality, I think it's so important to give a realistic impression of what the instruments will be. So for me, the trumpets are still too little. I
Too
think
little. You want a little more. Okay.
the trumpets, especially in the big climates, like when the trumpets have those chords, those triads, um, they need to really, I would say, a good 10% more, you
Oh,
know,
okay. No
because it
problem.
because it needs to create it's the excitement of that sound that actually creates the impact of the climax,
Got it. Sure.
and without that it becomes grand, but it becomes sort of controlled in how you hear it. um,
Definitely. I really appreciate the comment, because one of the things that we face in these kinds of situations, we're trying to create a three-dimensional experience from a two-dimensional world. And so everything you tell me is super helpful, because a lot of times I am controlling everything without wanting to. We have no choice, because every person did this without hearing the rest of the group playing. And so literally we're building people. And it's interesting, because it shows sometimes how people who play together also somehow, are able to bond even if they're not in the same room.
mm,
You could
mm,
tell, like, for example, some people who've been, because we know they've been in sections together for a while. When they play sometime, how easy it's to blend that. Somehow they know how they play together really well. So even though they're, say, thousands of miles away, they're still sounding as if they're together, because they know how they play as a team. It's really
yeah,
humbling to listen to some of this way.
yeah, I know it was very beautiful. I had a hard time recording it, just because I trying to do it in one take, and it was nice to be able to hear the orchestra as I was conducting rather than a MIDI. This was
Yeah.
really really inspiring. Yeah, I mean, Winton at the beginning of the lockdown, Winton did a video with Jazz at Lincoln Center, and he said that the funniest thing was his entire life, like the past 20 years, he's been not fighting, but he's been discussing and teasing with a sound engineer about the fact that the musicians are more important, or the sound engineer is more important at the end of putting together a project, right? And Winton was always like, no, the musicians, like this is, we play, and how we play, that's how it is. And the sound engineer said, okay, well, you think that way, but okay. So they had to do this video, right, for their gala, and they did this video which everyone recorded with a cell phone, you know, and then the sound engineer put it together, and they have an amazing team, right? And the sound engineer put it together, and it sounded amazing, right? And then Winton was congratulating him, said, man, this sounds so good, thank you for doing that. And he said, so Winton, I said, are you ready to change your mind about whose job is more important to make that sound good? you
you
know
know
because I mean, here we are, everyone with a cell phone, making a video, but then there is a person that actually puts this together to make a beautiful sound. So
It's
it's
so amazing because it's actually it's so strange because honestly the best projects of these kinds always I think have been about the best collaborators.
mm,
And it's ironic, but I find it just powerful to know how sometimes, like even in these situations, I sort of live between these two worlds where I love playing, but for years I've been doing this because I've just really enjoyed it. And I have to tell you, there's something really interesting about understanding both worlds because you're trying to think sometimes purely mathematically and sometimes absolutely not.
mm,
And I feel like honestly, the winner between Winton and his audio man is basically the middle guy who put them together.
yeah.
Because also this audio engineer, I'm certain, would never be able to make a performance that's not the quality of Winton and his team sound as good as they just sound naturally.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Cool.
Well,
So you'll
okay,
send me when you send to the team whatever you have by tomorrow. I'll look and then see what it feels like,
sure.
and then yeah, hopefully everything. I'm sure everything will be fine, but I'll take a look and see what it feels like. Will it have? I'm guessing we'll have the sound already, right?
Yes, yes. It's gonna have basically what you've been hearing right now. What I'll do before I send this to you guys is I will bring up the trumpets a little bit more. I'll brighten them up really a little bit
Brighton,
because I
yeah.
think that's what's gonna help the texture come through. And so you'll hear basically that audio with everything else I'm doing.
Mm-mm-mm.
Yeah.
Did you record the percussion, or did you split the parts with Scott and with Galen?
Oh, they're all recorded. We all split them, so everybody recorded. Yeah.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
The percussion sounds really good. I mean, the sound.
Really?
I really like the sound. No, I'm serious. Like I was surprised when the bass drum came in. I was like, wow. I mean,
So
it
the
was such a beautiful impact. Yeah.
So I appreciate you saying the bass drum. So luckily, I know some people had an opportunity. I actually play the bass drum, and I'm saying this not because it's me, but because I had the ability to have real microphones.
Mm,
So when I recorded, I had actually I have a setup in my studio that has omnidirectional microphones that pick up the room, and then I have also some carrier microphones which pick up the actual directional instruments. So the bass drum sounds the way it does because just we had
it's
the
good
luxury.
technology. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not really. If it was on a phone, it would be tricky.
Right. I'm sure. That's why I was surprised when it came. I said, wow, this is, I could pick up the quality of that track. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's one of the interesting things. I think a lot of people during this process are starting to realize how important for musicians for us to have some sort of device actually that helps us, record ourselves and hear ourselves play, sort of how we normally really sound. Because I think phones are pretty good, but I think any microphone that's a little bit higher quality would just give more detail. So
Mm-mm-mm.
people have been actually getting kind of interested into, well, what should I buy? Should I buy a basic microphone? I want to have something going forward because I think people realize that maybe when this whole health scare is over, that I think a lot of projects will continue to exist virtually.
Mhm, mhm,
And I think musicians being well versed in how to record themselves, also just realize how to learn basically about how we sound really on recording is
mhm,
really going to be helpful.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
So I also hope that the next Apple phone is going to be with a better microphone for music. you know,
Maybe they
but
finally,
that,
yeah,
yeah, exactly. But I got you. I'll brighten the trumpets. I'll add this. I'll send it to you guys tonight sometime. And yeah, give me any feedback. I want it to be as good as possible.
cool. Very cool,
Uh,
boss.
hey, thank you, boss. Be safe. Enjoy yourself. We'll talk soon.
All right, sounds good, Svet. Thank you.
Take care, Christy.
Bye.
Bye bye.